Welcome to the fourth episode of the Trench Crusade lore series. It's been quite a while since the last one, and we have some fascinating lore to explore. The stories and art are sourced from official channels and edited for a more immersive experience. If you enjoy the video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your comments below. And with all that being said, let's dive in. Anchored by the Taurus Mountains to the north and Zagros Mountains in the east, the two horns of the crescent moon, the invincible iron wall of Du al-Qarnayn, is both the symbol of the Sultanate and the very reason for its existence. Beyond it lies the last and the greatest realm of those who believe. Easily eclipsing all other known wonders of the world, none who have seen the iron wall can ever forget it. Despite centuries of artillery bombardment by heretic cannons, its surface is untarnished, glittering like a newly cast steel plating in the morning sun. And at night, the manifold gemstones embedded into its very structure light up in a wondrous show of color and artistry. Neither the wall itself nor its gates have ever been brought down, and while some enemies have made it across the wall to spread death and terror deep into the Sultanate proper, they have always been thrown back. The wall remains warm to the touch, for scorching magma still courses within. On the exceedingly rare instances when a terrifying weapon of hell has managed to crack its surface, the outpouring of molten metal within has brought a swift death to the invaders, and the rapidly cooling lava has then hardened to reform the wall. At regular intervals stand towers and bulwarks erected by the sultans of both past and present, specifically constructed to support the long-range artillery of the Imperial School of Military Engineering. The great spires act as both lookouts as well as minarets for calling the believers to Salah 5 times a day. These constructions, mighty as they may be, are not nearly as durable as the invincible iron wall. They are often under repairs or being rebuilt due to the horrendous damage heretic artillery and long-range bombers inflict upon them. There are 4 great gates, as well as many lesser ones, roughly corresponding to the 4 cardinal directions. Each holds a great garrison commanded by a Sanjak Bey, Lord of the Standard, responsible for the security and protection of the trade routes beyond. Despite their formidable constructions, the Sultan's Pashas know that if one of the 4 gates was ever taken, the Sultanate would be in mortal peril. Thus it is not just Janissaries and a host of Azebs and sappers that guard the great gates, but instead each entrance is also guarded by 2 Takwin creatures of truly colossal proportions. Winged beasts with eyes keener than those of any hawk, and claws that can tear a heretic tank in half with a single swipe. Their form was chosen in honor of the legendary Burak that once carried the Prophet. They are not only there to protect the gates with physical force, but also with their wit. Created with keen intellect, the Burak Takwin test the travelers to the Sultanate with subtle but deeply sagacious questions and riddles, exposing heretic infiltrators and weeding out those who would bring harm to the believers. Due to their intelligence, the Takwin Guardians are well aware of the artificial nature of their being, suffering from the knowledge of their unnatural existence. It is said that they are created as pairs not only for their might, but also that they could give solace to each other with deep philosophical discussion and sophisticated poetry, alleviating the pain of their existential horror, for they were created by a man and not by God, and thus can hold no hope of salvation. When there are no passers-by traveling through the gate, their low, rumbling voices echo across the wall as they debate the meaning of the 99 names of Allah, the nature of love or past battles they have engaged in the many years of their existence. Creation and maintenance of even one of these mighty beasts costs the Sultan the yearly income of an entire Nahia, and occupies the finest cadre of the alchemists of the House of Wisdom for a better part of 7 years. It is a price the Sultan is glad to pay for the protection of his people. The bountiful blessings of the Iron Wall are not limited to mere physical protection from the forces of Shaitan. The scholars of the House of Wisdom have labored for decades to create machines to help maintain and regulate the precipitation within the lands of the believers, as well as making Sultanate airspace exceedingly hard for heretic aerial forces to harry, due to the high winds that often whip above the spires of the Iron Wall. Here, wondrous devices trap the passing gales and storms, using them to guard their airspace against hell bombers and long-range reconnaissance planes. The Valley of the Word serves as both the headquarters and spiritual home of the Synod of Strategic Prophecy. Its location remains one of the most closely guarded secrets in all of Christendom, a hidden temple nestled deep within a remote European gorge, where the very stones help to amplify the echo of God's words. Some say this sacred valley was the first place on earth where creation began. Whatever the truth, it is a place that makes men tremble and humbles all who enter. Within its bounds, one feels like the weight of an intense gaze that pierces all shadows and falsehoods, a pressure that reveals your innermost thoughts and exposes the deepest recesses of the soul. Few can withstand walking these hallowed grounds without bowing their heads in submission. But above all, the valley is the only place on earth where one can learn the superhuman skills of the observers, the warrior monks of the order. It is the sole source of tacticians of the Synod who allow communion with the Council of Saints. It is no wonder, then, that the cost for those who find the valley without permission to enter is steep, a lifetime of servitude as a lay brother or sister. These unwilling initiates, alongside willing volunteers, compose the army of servants and menial laborers known as receptors. Their brains are partially replaced with receivers attuned to the Word of God, transmitted from the powerful arrays atop the Temple of the Word. The floor of the valley itself forms the cloister of the temple, a vast expanse covered with arrays of dishes, antennae, radio telescopes, and listening posts, all straining towards the heavens to communicate with God. Here, the supplicants of the Synod send their prayers, pleas, and questions into the firmament, listening intently for an answer back. The cryptic messages they receive are processed through great difference engines designed by the Synod's ordained engineers, then translated, analyzed, and studied by scholar monks from the many monasteries. Each monastery specializes in their own area, ranging from subjects such as the woman clothed in sun, the great beast, or interpreting the sounds of angelic trumpets. The Synod's agents tirelessly scour sanitariums and asylums, searching for those who claim to hear the words of the Almighty. It is a thankless task, as fewer than 1 in 10,000 that undergo the test have the true gift. The rest are prisoners of their own delusions, mere charlatans, or those whose minds have been broken by the horrors of the Great War. Rarer still are the children who hear the word with clarity. The Synod seeks them out at the earliest age possible, so they can become tacticians. Younger children with the gift hear the divine counsel far more clearly than even the most well-trained adult observers, and become the Synod's most valued assets. The valley is home to all manner of workshops and foundries which produce the armaments of the observers. The most important of these is the Califactory, where the wondrous Oculus helmets are created out of pure orichalcum, each one a unique masterpiece of engineering and craftsmanship. Since no two souls experience the voice of God the same way, every Oculus helmet is custom-made, attuned to its wearer's unique spiritual resonance. These helmets allow the warrior monks and nuns to extract righteous guidance from a divine narrative, spanning from the dawn of creation to the present moment and into the distant future. Scattered across the valley floor are hundreds of monastic cells, each home to an observer, a highly trained warrior monk of the Synod. They live their lives in secluded devotional space with the most minimalistic of furnishings or decorations, so nothing can disturb their concentration. Specially constructed walls block all external interference, radiation, light waves, even the faintest sounds are eliminated, so that nothing disrupts their communion with the voice. The observers emerge only twice a day for simple meals, and each day, save on Sabbath when they fast, they train for 6 hours in martial combat. One day is devoted to the practice of using the resonance of their oculus helmets, allowing them to use the voice of God to command any being in creation, if only for a fleeting moment. The rest of their lives are devoted to meditation upon the Word of God, locked away in their living tombs that know no sound. They only leave the temple for the most critical missions when the Synod elders have received divine guidance. At the very heart of the valley, surrounded by the cells of the observers, stands the Gate of God, a colossal steepled tower that serves as the conduit for receiving the holy words. Yet the great central tower remains incomplete. For generations, the Synod's finest minds have experimented with countless different arrays and variants of the sacred geometry, trying to construct the perfect receptor, one that will receive the voice of God with absolute clarity. The tower is circled day and night by processions of the arcs of the signal. The bearers of these arcs, which are fashioned after the Ark of the Covenant and integrated with sophisticated radio arrays, are permanently connected to them with synaptic cables and chemical tubes. They labor ceaselessly to locate the optimal position of the ark they bear on each given day, so that the Synod can capture the most elusive words of God beyond the reach of the main arrays of the tower. Each year the Gate of God rises higher, its maze-like network of antennae, loudspeakers and receptors emitting a hymn of every language ever spoken, echoing through the valley of the Word, as the Synod tries to tap directly into the words of creation. Despite generations of labor, the General Secretariat of the Synod remains unsatisfied. The lay brothers toil endlessly, seeking to hear the Creator's voice with no interference. Beneath the central tower, deep within the valley's bedrock, dwell the prophetic tacticians, the most precious assets of the Synod. These gifted children are surgically, genetically, and chemically altered to make them perfectly suited to their role. They are equipped with strange and esoteric equipment that allows them to hear the Word of God. Their seclusion is even more extreme than those of the observers, and the strain on their bodies and minds is far more severe. They are implanted with devices that allow their very being to reverberate with the voice of God, and they can be connected to the machinery of the Synod. The younger they are when their training begins, the better, the stronger their connection, for the closer they are to innocence, the easier it is for them to hear the divine words. Some chambers, even deeper within the tower's foundations, are guarded by a cadre of watchers, the most elite warriors of the temple, crowned by horns of light. What lies behind these doors remains a mystery, but some claim to have seen alchemists of the Iron Sultanate passing through, and whispers persist of monstrous wailing echoing from behind their 100-ton vault doors. If there is any truth to these rumors, none can say, but they only add to the awe-inspiring reputation of the Synod. In recent years, the War Cardinal has voiced criticism of the Synod, likening their tower to the hubristic act of Babel. Some claim his objections are less theological than political, for the Synod is becoming an independent army outside the control of the princes of the Church. But for now, this schism remains a war of words rather than swords. After decades of matching and often overcoming the heretic naval menace with the might of the royal fleet, the Crown of England now finds most of its battles are fought on their own land. Ever since the disastrous naval Battle of Blooded Cliffs in 1805, England has been a country at war. Betrayed by the Prince of Wales, who switched sides in the middle of the battle, the remnants of the English fleet were only salvaged thanks to Admiral Nelson's rearguard action and the heroic sacrifice of HMS Bellerophon. The rest of the fleet limped into Portsmouth to fight another day, though mercifully so great was the toll exacted by Nelson's defiant last stand that an immediate full-scale invasion of Britain was averted, for the legendary admiral took the Great Red Dragon, the flagship of the heretic fleet, to the bottom of the ocean with him. The years that followed were hard for England. With their lost dominance of the waves, its overseas territories were gone, and even the vital trade with mainland Europa became a desperate struggle. Heretic naval raiding parties caused widespread chaos and destruction all along the Albion coastline, often striking deep into the countryside, pillaging and burning towns and cities before being intercepted by the Crown Army, which was being stretched to its limits. Faced with death by 1,000 cuts, King Robert the Longsword reformed the army to counter this threat, and began plans for the building of a secret weapon to safeguard the nation, putting the fate of England in the hands of Project Invincible, the construction of the moving fortress of Britannia. Completed in the year 1907 AD, the construction of the moving fortress of Britannia and its entry in the Great War finally stabilized the situation on English shores, as it was able to match and exceed the heretic forces in any type of warfare, wherever the infernal powers decided to attempt a landing, by simply moving there under its own immense power and unleashing its devastating combined arms power upon the invaders. The moving fortress is a marvel of industrial engineering, a titanic fleet carrier and battleship that can traverse both land and sea. This Leviathan patrols the shores of England, leaving a thick trail of black smoke and 3-foot-deep tracks in its wake. It acts both as a mobile base for England's high command, an unrivaled artillery stronghold, and the only faithful ship that can engage heretic behemoth-class vessels in one-on-one naval combat and emerge victorious. It is equally capable of engaging the heretic fleets at air, sea, or on land. Within the vastness of its 4 superstructure stands the fortress monastery of the 10,000 Knights of St. George, who can match even the fiercest heretics in close-quarter combat. An entire armored corps accompanies Britannia, and a full fleet consisting of 1/3 of England's remaining naval strength acts as its escort. Above it, the flower of England's air knights fly their fighter planes and naval bombers when the fortress goes to war, which is often. The heretic high captains are well aware of the strategic value of controlling the British Isles, and they constantly strive to establish a beachhead that would lead to eventual conquest, though thus far without lasting success due the might of the fortress. The technology that allows Britannia to move over shorelines is unknown and a closely guarded secret of the Crown. Whatever the source of this innovation, it allows the fortress to travel across the land of most English beaches, albeit slowly. When crawling upon England's shores, a great noise and deafening hiss of steam can be heard, and it appears that the ship does not touch the ground at all. If there is a weakness to the moving fortress, it is the fact that it is the only one of its kind. England's reserves of orichalcum and other critical minerals that were required to construct the pride of the nation were depleted by the enormous effort to build it, and current production and trade of such materials can barely maintain the repairs to the fortress and the rest of the fleet. Within the British Isles, the moving fortress is a delicate issue to discuss. It is dedicated to the defense of England alone, and her neighbors grumble that while Englishmen sleep soundly in their beds under its protection, the heretic navies raid Alba, Eire, and the lands of Wales with impunity. The English crown counters these accusations by pointing out that it is only the fear of the fortress that stops the hulking behemoth-class heretic battleships from approaching the shores of the three islands and mounting full-scale invasions on them all. Britannia proudly displays the heraldic device of the three lions. Until the construction of the moving fortress, the English coat of arms carried only the two lions of Willem the Conqueror. When the construction of Britannia was completed, a third lion was added. No ruler before had dared to raise their own device next to that of William I. On the prow stands the defiant image of Lady Britannia, carrying the sword forged in part from the melted sword katana, signaling that England will show no mercy to enemies that come to plunder its shores. The sailors of the fleet swear that the figurehead has the power to turn aside any heretic artillery shell due to the divine providence granted to it by God. Whether this is true or not, the proud figurehead has never been touched by an enemy weapon, adding to the mystique and majesty of this, the foremost defender of England. Though the Supreme Pontiff remains the spiritual heart of Western and Central Europa, the burden of the Church's war effort falls to 12 appointed war cardinals, each entrusted with command over a vital region within the faithful dominions. War Cardinal Domenico Alidosi of the Papal States is a vigorous, charismatic, and aggressive frontline commander. Under his supervision, the Swiss Guard has seen a forceful expansion, including a large contingent of newly raised heavy mechanized infantry, Papal Air Force to ensure the sanctity of the Holy See and the expansion of the Holy Fleet. This combined Mediterranean fleet is responsible for both maintaining naval parity with the heretic fleets as well as supplying the fortresses of Cyprus that protect New Antioch from seaborne assaults. The War Cardinal has incorporated many novel ways to ensure that the coffers of the Church are not stretched beyond their limit, such as selling war indulgences and chantries to supplement the treasury. The War Cardinal is responsible for the defense of the Papal States against the encroaching threat of the heretic mainland invasion force that has reached the Italian peninsula. Here the faithful struggle to contain the artificial monstrosities of the legions of the demon Eligos, bought from the death factories with a huge loan from the Bank of Mammon. As the automaton soldiers and war machines of hell need little to no supplies, they present an extremely difficult enemy to dislodge from the areas they have taken. He dreams of retaking Venice, the ancestral home of his family, but with the vast effort required in maintaining New Antioch, he has found it difficult to muster enough forces for a campaign against Great Duke Eligos and his mechanical horrors. Since the fall of man, the borders between the worlds have been strained. When the perfect order of God was blighted by sin, it allowed creatures from hell to escape their miserable domains, where they had been condemned for their rebellion against Yahweh. With the ultimate heresy, the borders of the worlds became even more worn, and tears in reality appeared, allowing some denizens of hell to escape their just punishment, bringing misery to earth. Thus it is no wonder that all cultures have tales of hunters in the dark, monsters that have come from another world to savage and consume ours. But some cuts in the fabric of reality are deeper than others. In the vast coldness of the far north, the borders of creation sometimes give way, allowing a gaping hellmouth to manifest itself in the physical world. Some say this northern gate stands at a cross-section of ley lines, where men fell prostrate before graven images in the dark days. Others say that this was the place where Angel Azazel fell in the most desolate of all regions of the world. Though nothing but an insignificant miniature copy compared to the vile majesty of the true Hellgate of Jerusalem, the Hellmouth of the North still holds enough power to make the thrones of all the realms within the Arctic Ocean tremble. Hidden in the trackless wilderness of the Kola Peninsula, the gate appears for a brief few hours, in location and time, shifting with the mercurial power struggles of hell itself. When such a time comes, the skies turn red, and a hail of brimstone burns everything it touches for miles around. As the gate yawns open, the unbearable heat of hell reduces forests to cinders, and the unearthly fumes turn animals into twisted monstrosities that rend each other and themselves in anguish. The Hellmouth then disgorges the hosts of the court of the seven-headed serpent, coming to challenge the rule of God. At such times, those men of the north that have fallen to darkness gather under the banners of hell and muster at the gate. Combined warbands strike out, and foe fires light the night sky of the north. The light of the Redeemer never shone as bright here, and many people still cling to their old ways and old gods. It is a bitter twist of irony that not all who fight for the lords of Inferno see themselves as servants of evil. The devils know how to appear beautiful and noble in the eyes of their followers to deceive the humans. Many believe they are fighting for real gods to drive away the invaders. The Hellmouth of the North never remains open for long. The Synod of Strategic Prophecy strives to predict the timing and the ever-shifting location of its next appearance, so that the Church of the North and the forces of the Kalmar Union, the knightly orders of the North and the Tsardom of Novgorod, can muster to meet them in battle. It is a war often fought in the middle of winter, and the servants of the court have proven to be just as adept at using intense cold and ice, as well as hellfire in their war against the faithful of the North. These incursions tie up the greater part of the strength of the people here, which otherwise could be used to bolster the main theatre of war in the Levant. And whilst thus far each invasion has been defeated, they have all left their mark in trackless forests and endless tundra. Remnants of monsters lurk in the dark forests and forbidding hills, waiting for the call to arms that is sure to come next time the Hellmouth of the North gapes open. There is another, deeper concern that the War Cardinal holds about the Northern Gate, and why his personal servants keep vigil over it. Ziminiar, one of the royalty of fallen angels, is also the devil of the North. The Council of Saints has issued a dire warning to the princes of the Church. If this scion of hell ever becomes the serpent head of pride, he will come to claim the North as his own, and mountains will tremble at his passing. In the year of our Lord 1429, after 66 years of bitter warfare, the great hegemon of Beelzebub, Yersinia Rex, was finally brought down by the combined forces of the Church, led by the living Saint Jahan Dark. The final cataclysmic Battle of Valence saw the destruction of most of the forces of the Black Grail in mainland Europa, thus ending the Corpse Wars. Enraged by this defeat, the fury of Beelzebub knew no bounds. He had invested so much of the power of the Black Grail on the fallen hegemon and his legions, that the hatred of the Lord of the Flies turned on his failed followers. The Prince of Decay cursed his miserable progeny and cast them out of the Order of the Fly, dooming them to wander the earth, mourning for their lost hegemon until time itself is no more. But not all members of the cult of the Black Grail that took part in the Corpse Wars suffered the same fate. From the city of Ekron, where the power of Beelzebub has always been at its greatest since the elder days, came the priests of the Black Grail who acted as messengers and heralds to the hegemon, advisors sent by the Lord of Flies himself to plot the conquest of the church heartlands. They were part of the religious rather than the military hierarchy of the Black Grail, and as such were bound to the Lord of the Flies directly. When the war was lost, these high-ranking servants of the cult and their personal guards broke through the faithful encirclement and turned south. Though victorious, the exhausted and decimated forces of France, the Holy Roman Empire, and the Crown of England decided not to pursue the last remnants of the seemingly broken foe. This mistake proved to be a costly one. Instead of fleeing towards heretic domains, the forces of Beelzebub stormed the city of Avignon. The city had been fortified against just such an occasion, but it was betrayed from within. Hidden cultists of the Lord of the Flies opened the gates to the invaders at night, led by the traitorous Cardinal of the city. His name is now struck from all records, but it is said that he had grown jealous of the supreme pontiff, wishing to be seated on the throne of Peter himself, but he had been denied. Humiliated, he sulked into the bishopric of Avignon to slowly plot his revenge. His time came when those followers of his, who had joined the cult of Beelzebub in secret, opened the gates and welcomed their conquerors. In a single night the city was overrun and turned into the vilest den of pestilent corruption this side of the gates of hell. In a mockery of the papal throne of Rome, the cult declared the opening of a cathedral of Beelzebub in the great palace of the once beautiful city, issuing a direct challenge to the Bishop of Rome for the spiritual leadership of the continent. The traitorous Cardinal now declared himself the anti-pope, and since that dark day he has sat on the seat, drowning in endless ceremonies to warped congregation flies, untold billions strong. In a revolting parody of holy matrimony, this patriarch of Beelzebub married an enormous sow bloated with Grail's disease, defiling thus the grand chapel of Avignon. This union spawned the first missionaries of the Black Grail. These creatures are a mix of unclean beasts and the high clergy of the cult, filled with missionary zeal to convert mortals to their cause with far greater autonomy and intellect than the soldiers of the Grail. These children of the Fly lead missionary warbands, which the Patriarch sends out to challenge the spiritual supremacy of God rather than conquer the lands, as is the duty of the Order of the Fly. After many torturous years under the rule of the cult, Avignon is now so ridden with the most virulent and unique strain of the Black Grail that its recovery seems to be a cause with no hope of success. The very earth is warped and teems with parasites and maggots infested with the filth of Beelzebub, with trillions of eggs hatching each year to overwhelm the city with further decay. Every faithful force sent to raise the city has only succeeded in swelling the numbers of its monstrous inhabitants, as its would-be conquerors have succumbed to the power of the Black Grail, which never wanes in this accursed place. Thus, a policy of containment has been chosen instead, as the servants of Beelzebub do not pursue an open policy of expansion. Because of this, significant forces are kept around the hinterlands of Avignon, both to contain the corrupt preachers of Beelzebub from infiltrating Europa and to stop those deranged men and women who wish to join the ranks of the cult of their free will. The number of such insane people is disturbingly high, despite the best efforts of the Church. In revenge, the Patriarch of Beelzebub sends out his own bands of missionaries to spread the ecstatic word of the Black Grail across the globe. On moonless nights, music like the buzzing of a million flies can be heard rolling over Avignon's decaying ramparts. Then the deformed but silver-tongued missionaries lead plague almoners swollen oblates and thrall monks out of the gates and engage in battle against those who refuse to receive the joyous tidings of the Lord of the Flies. Many are stopped by the ever-vigilant patrols, but some make it through the cordon, and their corruption becomes a seed from which new infestations of the Black Grail spring forth. Sister Loretta was a member of a modest order of devotees to Saint Dionysia, who was scourged and subsequently martyred by a barbarian king in the 5th century. Together, the sisters maintained a tiny hospice within the sanctuary of the Immaculate Heart in Ambireka in southern Nubia. The remote sanctuary had remained untouched by war for decades, even when the legions of Mammon ravened to the south and west after the sack of Karada. In December, beginning 3 days after St. Dionysius's holy day, the night showed the sullen red of settlements being put to the torch, and thereafter each morning the smoke columns came closer. The injured and refugees fleeing to the sanctuary grew from a trickle into a flood. Bitter, defeated soldiers, terrified peasants, dust-streaked hungry children, each day brought more, and the sisters could turn no one away. As the surrounding regions emptied, stripped bare by the followers of Mammon, food, medicine, and water became barely sufficient. Supplies were rationed, and the rations were cut again and again. As bellies emptied and the sick multiplied, men became desperate, and inevitably, despite the sisters' protestations, harsh penalties were enacted upon thieves and looters, both real and imagined. Brutal discipline, devout prayer, and sheer desperation kept the sanctuary functioning across months of deprivation and torment, each day a dull, keening knife of despair. Finally, the legion of the 5th Golden Horn took note and closed in with the confident certainty of a hunter checking their traps. Even cornered, the people of the sanctuary knew that surrender to the Prince of Greed's brazen demands offered no peace. Instead, they chose to resist, accepting the finality of the grave and the thin prayer of hope that someone or something would come to their aid. Laughing at such temerity, the Golden Legion laid siege in unhurried fashion while awaiting their mortal followers. Hunger would do their work, aided by the slobbering belch of mortar and cannon as they rained shells down upon their hapless prey. More days and nights of torment and sacrifice followed with no hope in sight. All of the sisters perished one by one until only Sister Loretta was left, and 9/10 of the people trapped inside the sanctuary died before the first assault. Finally, on the 7th day, strident horns sounded in the Legion camp, but it was not to unleash the long-anticipated assault. It was a call to arms. Another war host glittered on the horizon, and battle erupted in the besiegers' rear. But as the new force came closer, it became clear that they were deathless soldiers of the Black Grail. The two forces, damned and dead, struggled like giants beside an ant-hill, and none can say who was the victor. The sanctuary was overrun in the fighting and left in ruins. Its defenders died to a man and woman. The sick and injured were slain in their cots. No refugee escaped the trap. And the final sister, the last of her order, the one who suffered and witnessed and prayed and fought as everything she had ever known or cared about was relentlessly ground down into dust and despair. Well, she lived after a fashion, or at least she didn't perish in the rubble. Perhaps the Grail bestowed a gift upon her, or perhaps her apotheosis was truly divine. Whatever the truth, our sister Loretta did not die that day, Our Lady of Penitens. She rose again. After the monastery of St. Vindictus fell to the Black Grail's contagious doctrines, and the undead converts marched forth to bolster the siege of New Antioch, the Church of the Metamorphosis came scuttling in to wrap the shattered towers and the bomb-broken walls in mud and saliva and claim the monastery for their order. Soon the fanes and hallways echoed with new chants, the buzzing, clicking, clacking, squelching mantras of the insectoid monastics. A portable doorway was brought all the way from their home monasteries in the inverted mountains of hell and erected in the desecrated cathedral. And there the brothers and sisters gather to contemplate the sights that churn eternally in the world beyond. A newly reborn acolyte, still wearing tatters of the human skin he'd shed when the maggots of communion reshaped his inner flesh, comes clicking into the scriptorium where many of his brother and sister acolytes are penning propaganda to distribute throughout the heretical provinces. At an empty desk, he dips his finger-like mandibles in ink and proceeds to write a screed based on the signs he'd just beheld beyond the doorway, signs that become symbols on parchment made from the hides of willing sacrifices, symbols that will worm into the brains of any readers, and there lay the seeds of transformation. In their shrines dug into the rock below the monastery, sisters of the transcendent chrysalid are interrogating a captured general from one of the penitent legions recently swarmed in the trenches outside New Antioch. The man has bitten out his own tongue to thwart their aims, but the sisters have no need for speech. They can't even hear through their translucent calls. They hoist him upside down and carefully, slowly crack open his skull. They are expert haruspices. Carefully jotting down the intel about the city's defenses, they read from the convolutions of his brain. Elsewhere in the monastery, the tiny abbot bows before the gigantic Mother Superior and the heaps of eggs she continually excretes from her birthing sacs. All day and all night, he supervises the droning postulants that spend their brief lives fertilizing the eggs by inscribing horrible sigils into their soft shells. The eggs are packaged in great cases and sent to the captured airfields south of the monastery, where they are taken up by possessed pigeons. The birds will drop the eggs all over New Antioch. Maybe 1 in 1,000 of the maggots that burst from them will find a willing host, but one is all that's needed. Through that person's eyes, the scryers in their bulging cocoons will search the city for weaknesses. All these activities, however, are just chores the monastics perform for the others' orders of hell in return for their continued solitude. They are not a militant order. They were formed to be scrutineers of the artifacts they call doorway. They are dedicated to studying the beyond, and there is no finer fate than to be hollowed out by the things they see, their souls twisted into incomprehensible shapes no material shell can contain. The mindless husks of the transcended are enshrined in their monasteries' libraries, where their sanctified chitin is consumed bit by pupil novices to help them continue their metamorphoses. The other orders often mock the Church of the Metamorphosis as navel-gazers and hair-splitters, but their role in the Great War is vital to hell's progress. What others perceived as endless noise and idly chatter is knowledge in flux. Knowledge that, once it's picked apart into its tiniest pieces, orchestrates the entire war, and, piece by minuscule piece, prepares the world for the day when the doorway opens and apotheosis comes blasting forth to illuminate everything in its absolute absence of sense. Alamut, the Unconquered, also known as Eagle's Nest, is the chief stronghold of the Nizari Ismaili sect, who still hold sway over their ancient lands near Bahar Khazar, the body of water the Franks call the Caspian Sea, as it has for over 800 years. This mountain fortress houses the dreaded Order of Assassins, No deadlier killers walk this world, raised from childhood in the lethal and esoteric arts that bend time and space in service of their mystic and lethal craft. Many learned scholars of the Iron Sultanate's ulama claim that Alamut was left outside of the Great Iron Wall as a mark of Allah's disfavor for their heretical views on religion. The mystics of the Assassins sneer at this suggestion and maintain that the ever-preserving knew his children at Alamut would need no such protection. Their own bravery would suffice. Though largely closed to outsiders, there are times when the old man of the mountain requires the services of outsiders or wishes to seek counsel from a sage of great wisdom in person. Such individuals awaken to find summons placed by their bedside delivered by unseen hands as they slumber. Summoned to the capital of Dalam, as the assassins call Alamut. Few dare to refuse such an invitation. At the mouth of the valley, they are met by servants of the Order, who blindfold them to ensure they cannot learn the hidden paths to the home of the Eagles. Though largely closed to outsiders, there are times when the old man of the mountain requires the services of outsiders or wishes to seek counsel from a sage of great wisdom in person. Such individuals awaken to find summons placed by their bedside delivered by unseen hands as they slumber. Summoned to the capital of Dalam, as the assassins call Alamut. Few dare to refuse such an invitation. At the mouth of the valley, they are met by servants of the Order, who blindfold them to ensure they cannot learn the hidden paths to the home of the Eagles. Such visitors tell of heavenly gardens, libraries that rival those of the House of Wisdom, and laboratories where philosophers, scientists, theologians, and sages of the Dervish Ismaili order debate a multitude of matters. Very few will speak of their audience with the Master of the Knives himself, the old man of the mountain, for fear of insulting their dread host. Of those brave enough to reveal details of their encounter, some describe being greeted by a youth full of vigor, an athlete and warrior at the prime of his life wearing a shining white cloak. Others, however, describe an ancient man with a long silver beard, stern and whip-lean, dressed in black kilat adorned with tiraz in the color of blood. Whether a result of a clever disguise or the mystic arts of the Hashashian, no two descriptions of the countenance of the Lord of Alamut match each other. All accounts agree on one detail: a simple ring bearing a seal engraved with the symbol of the Holy King, whom the Franks call Solomon the Wise, rests upon a chain around the neck of the Lord of Alamut. Rumors abound that this is the first and true seal given by Allah to the mighty king, Sulaiman ibn Dawood, giving him the power to command spirits such as Shayati and Jinn. It is speculated it is the power of the seal that has kept Alamut safe all these years, despite Hell's forces holding the land surrounding Alamut and its hinterlands. Whatever the truth of the matter, no warband of the court of the seven-headed serpent has ever approached the citadel of Alamut. Beelzebub's unclean order of the fly recoils from the assassin's hinterlands, and no outbreak of the Black Grail has ever been reported within their domain. It seems that Hell's otherworldly powers are held at bay by some kind of protection capable of countering their Gothic magic. Thus the mission to conquer Alamut has fallen upon the mortal followers of Jahannam. Abaddon, the great prince of wrath, has promised a reward of eternal youth to any heretic warlord who captures the eagle's nest. Despite the overwhelming numbers of the forces of the heretic legions, all who have attempted to take the fortress thus far have failed. Many attempts to invade are thwarted in their earliest moments, as great heretic lords die in their tents to assassins' daggers, or through poison in their meals. Others disappear without a trace, their painstakingly built alliances falling apart like chaff in the wind. Scarcely a decade passes without Alamut being assaulted, for there is no lack of ambitious heretic warlords. But the forces of Shaitan that have laid siege to its onyx walls have discovered that the fortress is all but invincible. The Alamut Valley, known as the Shirku, is bordered to the east by the Alamku mountain range, which means the throne of Solomon, and its entrance is a narrow one, shielded by cliffs and guarded by mystic standing stones. Besides this, the raging waters of the river, Alamut, make this entrance inaccessible for many months each year. Flanked by the iron wall to the east and west, any forces approaching come under a barrage of long-range artillery from its garrison, who gleefully exact a heavy toll on any would-be invaders. In the skies above, the airspace is protected and patrolled by the Sultan's flying ships of war, making aerial assaults impossible. Though no official document or declaration exists, the strategists of New Antioch widely believe that the Sultanate's indirect protection of the Alamut is granted in exchange for the services of the assassins. Alamut's natural and military defenses are not its only safeguard. Heretic long-range artillery finds its shells striking the surrounding mountains, never the fortress itself, no matter how carefully the distances are measured or what dark prayers are offered to patron demons. Assault forces lose their way, even when guided by infernal compasses and maps. Time itself flows in strange fashion here, and invaders find that each step robs their youth and vitality, causing them to succumb to the infirmity of old age long before reaching the walls of Alamut. Their spent and withered bodies fall to join other unsuccessful invaders scattered across the lands of the assassins, as their souls succumb to their doom in flames. Even to behold the fortress is a trial, its stones vanishing against the sky, eluding the eye and confounding the mind. Those who have tried to assault Alamut and have lived to tell the tale recall a powerful aura of forbidding menace surrounding the home of the eagles. Even the most devout and bloodthirsty heretic general, sworn to serve the serpent head of wrath, may think twice before challenging the assassins. And so Alamut endures, unconquered and unbowed. That brings us up to date with the recent lore releases. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. I'm blown away by the community we are building, and I appreciate all your support. At the moment, we are 20,000 strong with no sign of slowing down, and that would not be possible without you. Thank you. Finally, I apologize for the delay in my newsletter. I assure you that the first one will be arriving soon with some cool gifts. If you're not yet subscribed, check the description for the link. If you'd like to support me directly, you can do so via Ko-fi or by becoming a channel member. Supporters will be getting ad-free videos and early releases, as well as free wallpapers, like always. Thanks again, and I hope you have a good day or a good night.